We are in school tomorrow, but our athletic events are canceled for Monday and Tuesday.
Murray City's out tomorrow.
Yeah. Anybody else have prayer requests this morning? Yes, Diane says Todd called him this morning, said he has a bunch of his crew in the police force that are out. So they're running real. Yeah. We got the families that are,
Sorry.
a lot of families that are mourning the loss of their kids this week. We're recovering from.
No, it's just teaching.
We're with those right victims and their families.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Have you got any Sunday school money? Yeah. Let's make sure Chris gets it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Just remember our project for the Christmas boxes?
Oh, yeah. It's Samaritan's Purse and
Yes.
the shoe boxes. Michael Payton, is he having surgery on the 17th for his stomach? So that's coming up pretty soon. Miss Sandra? Anybody else? Michael, will you pray for us, please?
Lord, we just open up this service to you today, Lord, that we would study the Bible and how our obedience should be to you, and how it should be to each one of us and each other, how we should treat each other. That those that are paid to listen and for James as he prepares and teaches, Lord. As we be in our service today, Lord, we should have a victory in our life.
So this morning we begin, and we go back to Exodus chapter 23. So what's the scene in Exodus in chapter 23? Where are we in this event? Literally, where are we? Or where is Moses?
Where is my?
Well, where's Moses? It's up on the mountain. God's speaking to him on the mountain where the fire has come down. They warned everybody not to come up. Moses is up on top of that mountain, and God is delivering the law to him. So, chapter 20, what did God give Moses in chapter 20 of Exodus? The tablets, the 10 commandments, those written by God himself on these tablets of stone that were not cut out by human hands. That was a gift that God gave man. Now, Moses is up there listening to God give these instructions. God had given Moses instructions, write all this stuff down. Keep record of this, write all it down. So he begins with the 10 commandments, and then there's this follow-up that goes with it. So the 10 commandments give the bedrock foundation of this covenant relationship between God and the people. And as we go through Exodus, and we go through this time where God's given Moses the rest of these laws, each of these laws builds on an aspect of those 10 commandments. Whether it's honoring God, having no idols, whether it's not taking the Lord's name in vain, don't commit murder, don't commit adultery, don't perjure yourself. Each one of those 10 commandments is being built on with more detail, with more instruction, with ways that separate Israel from the rest of the world. So in the lesson today, it's about justice. So as we read through this, I want you guys to be thinking, how this applies. What Ten Commandment rule does this lesson go back to? Some of them are pretty easy. Right off the top of your head, you can probably think of a couple. So, the title of the next 4 lessons, the overriding theme is obedience in society. So this last portion of this reflects how Israel was supposed to interact with the society around them and how we take that same obedience and apply it in the society today. So, the first paragraph under the introduction. Obedience in society is the theme of our lessons in this final unit, with justice being the focus of today's lesson in particular. Justice is the principle and practice of moral rightness. Equity, righteousness, and fairness are terms related to justice, and we all seem to have an idea of what they mean. But where did we come up with those ideas? Where is the standard for what is just and what is not just? If you ask people out in the public, what kind of answers do you think you'll get? How do you know the difference between right and wrong?
The goodness of
Man's inherently good. We're inherently good to each other, so we just need to listen to our hearts.
God. I want to clear that up and believe.
I've heard. I think we've all seen that man in and of itself is not. How can anybody ever? Society has passed on these rules, and they change over time depending on the culture that you're in. We've heard the codes that have been established over the years, whether it's Hammurabi's code from 2,000 years ago, or whether it's a code that was written down in the French Revolution. We get some ideas about liberty, equality, and what's the other one?
Fraternity.
What?
Fraternity.
Fraternity, yeah. That's their big code of justice. In the United States, what do we have? The Constitution, right? The Bill of Rights. We've got those ideas where fairness and justice and rights come from. Well, God's getting ready to tell His people that every code is inadequate. What I give you is the truth. The code that I pass down to you, the laws that I pass down to you through my covenant relationship, that's where truth comes from. That's where true justice and equity, that's where these things have their source. So, in chapter 23, we begin this lesson talking about telling the truth. That's where we start in verse 1. So, who would read verse 1 through 3?
Thou shalt not raise a false report. Put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. Neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to the rest of judgment. Neither shalt thou countenance a poor man in his cause.
Thank you, Chris Shelley. Does anybody have any issue understanding the King James Version of that? Is it pretty clear when we use words like rest or countenance? Those terms make sense to us?
No.
Jessica says no.
Yes.
Chris says yes. So we've got some people here that have a good idea, some people don't. That's why there are more modern translations, right? I'm going to use the ESV just for example. So the text is a little bit different. Verse 1 says, "Thou shalt not raise a false report." In ESV, "You shall not spread a false report. You shall not join hands with a wicked man." See, it says, "Thou put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness." ESV says, "You shall not join hands with a wicked man to be a malicious witness. You shall not fall in with the many to do evil, nor shall you bear witness in a lawsuit, siding with the many, as to pervert justice. Nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his lawsuit." So that countenance word there means to give preference to give preference to the poor during a lawsuit. So again, there's some terms there that we don't normally use in the modern English language that sometimes make me go and dig a little deeper. So, what is he saying here in verse 1? "Shall not spread a false report." Does that go back to any of the original Ten Commandments?
Thou shalt not lie.
Bear false witness against thy neighbor. That's the King James, right? In the King James, that Ten Commandment is referring to a trial, a court, a testimony. Bearing witness against your neighbor is not just lying, but lying in a sense that you are helping make a judgment to go against them that wouldn't go against it unless you lied. Does that make sense? That's the context there. And now God is spelling that out a little more clearly here. You don't raise a false report. You're not spreading a false report. So what harm is done when people spread false reports?
People start to believe lies.
People start to believe lies and not the truth. All right?
And it's hard to change that perspective. Even if the truth comes out, it's been said.
It's out, right? You can't put that toothpaste back into the tube once that's out. That's a great point. It's out. And now you've got a perspective, you've got an idea, you've got a thought in your head about this person or this thing that is inherently wrong, but man, that's why we presume everyone is what?
Innocent.
Innocent, right? The presumption is that regardless of what the rumor is, or what maybe even some of the facts say, we're supposed to presume everyone is innocent in the United States. There are other countries that you presume guilt, and they have to prove their innocence. We don't believe that. That is not how our standard of government works. But there are many around the world that people have to prove they're innocent rather than that burden being on the prosecution, which is totally different. So, what does it mean here when it says, don't join hands or put thine hand with the malicious witness? What does it mean when it says join hands?
Don't join hands and making up lies against them.
Yeah, no, my rule.
Hey, Adam, you keep your mouth shut and I'll keep my mouth shut and we'll see how this all works out, right? Hey, you saw I was at home the whole time, right? Don't we hear that today?
Oh, absolutely.
Don't we hear people making those agreements where you cover me, I'll cover you, and it'll be fine? God spells that out. It's very clear here. So the standard of truth and justice God established such a long time ago. Now, Chris, we get to verse 2. You shall not follow a multitude to do evil. Mob rule. We're going to form a posse and go after them. When there is justice that's been established by God for right and wrong. What does Moses get from God about legal matters, even if it's murder or theft and stuff? It takes witnesses. It takes reliable witnesses.
City of refuge.
And they give these people a chance to escape and get to a city of refuge. So the idea that a mobs are inherently untrustworthy.
Yeah. Well, we're not really, you hear all this on the news, our democracy today, we're not a democracy.
We're a republic.
A democracy is my rule.
Yeah, we are a republic, a constitutional republic. Don't get those things confused, right? It's a big difference. We have elected officials for that reason. So mob rule is dangerous. How many times have we seen mob rule dangerous in society?
So a lot of buildings burned.
Summers ago. Buildings burned during the summer.
The jazz.
Capitol building attack. That was the mob rule, right? People going in and trying to take legal matters into their own hands. That's pretty dangerous, right? When there is a legal precedent for how we handle things like that. God says that's not right. Don't follow the mob. How many people get caught up in something? Well, I just went with the flow. I just went with everybody else. And it doesn't have to be anything violent like that. It can just be real simple things.
That's what's wrong with everybody in Nazi Germany.
Doing nothing, they went with the flow.
Yeah.
Not standing up against it, they just went with the
All
flow.
it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.
To do nothing. And that's exactly what this worries me here. So we need to be aware that we're all guilty or we're all susceptible to any of this too. This isn't a 3,000 year ago problem that ended. This is a problem that still exists today that we have to be aware of. So when we need to be obedient in justice, how does that look like? The second half of verse 2, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. So I struggle with that one. Nor shall you bear witness in a lawsuit siding with the many to pervert justice. Nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his lawsuit. We bring up all the time that judge in, where is it, Vermont?
Providence,
Rhode Island, who is very,
Meeting now.
he likes to, you know, he thinks that giving justice to someone who is down on their luck would be more right than being maybe fair. He gives them extra chances. He gives the poor folks a break when it comes to fees and fines and stuff. The Bible here is very clear. Don't, because a person is poor, do not give them partiality when it comes to a legal judgment, when it comes to a righteous judgment. Being poor doesn't make you inherently good. There's nothing about being poor that makes you good. Okay? On the other side, there's nothing about being rich that makes you inherently good either. So we're going to have a warning in our scripture today that says, don't be partial to the poor, don't be partial to the rich equally. How many of us are guilty of those things? In life, are we partial to the rich because there's some advantage we can get by being friends with them, or being, we could defer to them on certain things? Or do we take advantage of that relationship? Or on the other side, do we give those that are poor and struggle, do we give them some sort of grace that's not that extends past justice, that extends past righteousness? So the warning is for us to not look at anybody any differently. Look at it like that. That the rich or the poor, they're all the same in God's eyes. In our eyes, we need to make sure that we don't have those blinders that focus us one way or the other. Make sense? Pretty clear that we shouldn't do those things that give people an advantage that is not fair. Talking about fairness. Now we're going to skip into another section. We're just going to jump right into another section here that talks about our enemies. Matthew 5:44 says, we should love our enemies and do good to them that persecute us. So this is a theme that God preaches throughout all of Scripture, is how we should treat our enemies. So who are our enemies? Adam, do you have any enemies?
Oh, I hope not. I'm sure there's some folks that they don't care for me somewhere.
Mike, you got any enemies? Probably do. And there's going to be a time where you're going to be put in a situation where you're going to make a choice. Whether or not you can help them or cause more hurt to come to them. That's the lesson today, is that there's a choice we get to make. We're blessed with a choice on how we show God's grace to our enemies. So let's begin in verse 4. And look at this example God gives Moses. So 4 through 5. Just 4 and 5.
Thou make thine enemy's ox or his ass going astray, thou shalt surely bring it back to him again. If thou see the ass of him that hateth thee lying under his burden, and wouldest forbear to help him, thou shalt surely help with him.
Thank you, Terry. We're going to have to go out of our way to help our enemies. That's what God's telling his people here. If you have an enemy, a guy who has something against you, matter of fact, the word there is hate, right? He hateth you. And you see his animal or his property moving astray, you have a responsibility. What is it? Take it back to him. Now, in ancient times, that kind of makes sense, right? We've got animals, they're part of the property, it's wandering astray, it's gonna affect, I can go grab that donkey, that mule, whatever it is, and carry it back to him. What does that mean today? When people aren't doing their business with animals and, well, except for some farmers, okay, sorry, not trying to take that out, but how would I today help my enemy with his livelihood that was escaping him? Or his property that escaped his grasp? How would I be helping that person? How can I return that back to him? You're outside Dollar General store, and you meet somebody in the doorway that you just can't stand, so you don't even say anything to them, you just turn your head and walk away, and you notice that they drop a $100 bill on the ground. Good for them. Pocket that dude and walk away. No, thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. No, you run them down and get it back. So that's just a small example of what is a spiritual truth about how we should be toward our enemies. Who is the righteous judge? God. Why are you mad at him, or why is he mad at you? Could it be over nothing? Could it be something stupid? Could it be something that has just, who knows? God knows. So why am I holding that grudge against this guy who is also a child of God too? How can I be a good influence on him? Is be honest and true in how I behave toward him. In my business toward that person, I can take that to the highest level of integrity. Return not evil for evil, but good for evil. That's integrity, is doing that thing that's right, even when it's difficult, or even it's toward a person who's been evil to you. You still don't get to return that evil for evil. What does it say in the second part there in verse 5? He's talking about a beast of burden that's fallen under its load and he's struggling with it. What is our responsibility there? You get out of your comfort zone, you get out of your car, you get out of whatever it is, and you go help them. In the physical back then, that was pretty simple, right? You go take some, whatever that low burden is, off animal, help it get up, and help them load and get on.
To me, the lesson did something I see occasionally done in a lesson that I don't agree with.
What's that?
Made lots of assumptions that the donkey's been mistreated, that it
Oh, yeah, I'm not-
treat donkeys very much.
Yeah, I'm not even
It
gonna,
doesn't say any of that.
I didn't even,
Yeah, it just,
no. I'm looking at the
you
situation.
feel better because he's mistreated, so they're trying to justify why you should help him. That's not what it
And
says.
it's not what it says. And that is the point, Chris. That's absolutely the point. It's not justifying our actions to make us feel better about it. It's understanding how we are God's hands and feet. Go ahead, Jessica.
You have to remember it's talking about your enemy. And people would make assumptions. Well, I bet he's mistreated that animal.
Yes, that's
I
what
bet
you
he
assume
didn't
about
give
your
him
enemy,
enough
right?
food to eat.
Yeah, the author did the same thing he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly the same thing. That is an excellent point. So how does this look today? And I want to get past, you see your enemy out with a flat tire on the road and you help them change the tire. I think that's very surface level. What about their lives? What about if you see your enemy's life falling apart, maybe you should be there.
Somebody goes bankrupt and you think, well, that's what they deserve.
Good for them,
And
right?
they have a big fundraiser. I'm not giving them any money.
Exactly. That's a great example.
Again, it was an example.
No, it is a very good example. And think about it even in a spiritual sense. When you see your enemy's life, again, falling apart, not just bankruptcy, maybe it's a family issue, maybe it's a personal thing. And you inside want to say, well, it's about time they've got what's coming to them. That's not our responsibility to do that. What is our responsibility to do? Is to love them and to help build them back up and to get them back on the road again, using an analogy. That is our responsibility as Christians, not to take joy or consolation in them getting punished or going through a hard time. But as Christians, it is our job to go along beside even those that hate us. Jesus said it, pray for them, do good to them, That's Jesus' words, not James's. That's the reminder we need to have, is that when people are going through that stuff, it is our responsibility. And you know what can happen? Some amazing things. That relationship can be healed, that those people can see Christ in you and be drawn to Him. Those are amazing things that can happen when you take your pride out of the equation.
Like James used to say, you couldn't hate somebody if you were praying.
That is so, that's gospel, right?
And I find a lot of times, others are guilty of completely filling in tons of blanks when they hear about something. One side of the story, for instance, man, you gotta learn to teach yourself. I gotta hear out everything before I make a judgment.
And running with it.
Yeah.
And absolutely running with it to the extreme. Instead of praying. Instead of saying, oh, these people are in a tough spot. I don't know how they got there or why they're there. But it's my job
It also
to lift them up.
protects you. It also protects you not doing exactly that, jumping in on the side you want to pick. If you're just praying that the Lord work through the situation.
Isn't this lesson about not picking sides?
Well, my thought about this is if you're close enough to somebody to see if they need help and help them, that makes them your neighbor.
They are your neighbor.
And we know how we're supposed to treat them.
Absolutely. If you're close enough to that person, you can see them hurting, they're your neighbor.
Yeah, a Samaritan would normally think a Jewish person wanted nothing to do with him.
Yep.
But a good Samaritan would do that.
Exactly. Oh, this is, y'all are ahead of me on all this. I love it. It's awesome. So, we've got obedience and injustice. So we talked about how we're supposed to act with our mouth and to not bear false witness and to tell truth regardless of whether the person's poor or rich, whether there's an advantage to us one way or the other, either to make us look good or to get in good with somebody. We talked about compassion in the title that says everyday conduct and everyday behavior. So we have compassion not just on our friends but on our enemies and those that may not agree with us on everything and are hard on us. The last part here in 6 through 9, it says integrity in human relations. Now, Webster's dictionary has a definition of integrity, and it's doing the right thing when nobody's looking. Doing the right thing when there's no one there to see you do it. Well, God's always there, and it seems like there's always somebody watching us too. I don't think that our behaviors are hidden in a box that no one can see. I believe that all of our steps, I know God's always looking, but there's more often than not somebody else, whether it's a child or a friend or even a stranger, that sees how you're acting in public and how you're talking to people and how you're behaving. So let's look in these last 4 verses here and see how behaving rightly can have an effect on those around us. So, who would read 6 and 7? We'll just do those 2 first.
Thou shalt not rest the judgment of thy poor in his cause. Keep thee far from a false matter, and an innocent and righteous slay thou not, for I will not justify the wicked.
Thank you, Deanna. You shall not pervert the justice due to your poor in his lawsuit. Don't take advantage of them for not having a good lawyer, for not having the ability to defend themselves. Don't side with the rich because they have the ability to make it all go away with money. Don't do that. And also, don't, just because that person is poor, don't say that they're good just because they don't have anything. Just because you feel bad for them or have some sympathy towards them, don't let those ideas in your head pervert justice. Don't take that away from them. Justice is from the Lord. Verse 7 says, keep far away from a false matter. What does that mean?
Mine says a false charge.
Mine says a false charge.
And that's the New King James. Keep far away from a false charge. It says that in the ESV. somebody accuses somebody of something wrongly, what are we supposed to do? Stay away from it. Get away from it. Don't participate in it. Don't agree to it. How does that happen? How do you wind up on the wrong side of that? How do you wind up being a complicit person to a false charge? We kind of talked about that
To
already.
listen to one side.
That's it. You automatically assume something. What Chris just said a few minutes ago is that you take half the facts and run off, and
And sometimes it's our desire, sometimes it's about the person that you love and
It's
support.
Chris Shelley, he deserves it.
oh, well, yeah.
Well, you know what I mean?
I do know exactly what
Somebody
you
else's
mean.
name.
Yeah, but that's right.
But you can be that other side, that it's, that they're the ones you love and want to support, so you don't want to hear that other side.
You don't want to hear it.
Or keeping your mouth shut when you know different.
It's as bad or worse, absolutely. So staying away from that false report sometimes takes some effort on our end. Man, I really want this piece of ground to go to my family. I really want it to, but it's not right. The property lines are messed up, but man, I really want them to have it. I have a friend who's had a property dispute for several years. They finally got it figured out, but it was over some creek ground and some stuff, and they finally got it sorted out. But there's sometimes that has to go to court, and it has to go one way or the other. Who are you going to side with? You need to side with the truth, whatever it is, whether it's to an advantage to you or your friend or your family or not.
This happened many, many years ago, so I can tell you. But a family friend, not my family, but a family. Anyway, a guy dropped a bale of tobacco off of the wagon. And another came by and picked it up and put it in the trunk of his car. And this person that was watching it was good friends with the one that put it in the back of the car. But the guy that dropped it called that family and said, "Have y'all seen any tobacco laying out in front of your house?" And they were putting because that was a lot of money, I don't know how much, but
Yeah.
it was a bunch of money.
Well,
Those did, because they were about the size of a hay bale.
Yeah, ours will.
I mean, this
We
was
had-
50 years ago, this was a long time ago. But good family, one you wouldn't have thought would have done it, and they did. And then the other good family had to choose.
Yep.
And they did, they told the guy where the bale of the tobacco was. I don't know the rest of that, because that was taken out of,
That's not hidden.
yeah.
The last half of that verse tells us how it's not hidden. What does it say there in the last half of that verse? For I will not justify the wicked. That's, you may think it was in secret.
The money wouldn't have helped,
Yeah.
the money wouldn't have helped.
What's right is right. That's just an important part that we get, is that God always sees. So we can think that we're doing something under the radar, outside of people's sight. We can get away with it because it looks fine. God says, I will not justify the wicked. I know when that happens, it doesn't work out well. That's not how I want it to go. So, bribery is the next one. Our computer system at work is funny. I had to take our anti-corruption and anti-bribery course 3 times. Not because I failed it. Feel bad. I did not fail it. It's just that the system didn't recognize that I finished it. So every year we have to take this anti-corruption, anti-bribery course. Why do companies require it?
because it can influence your decision.
It influences your decision illegally. It's wrong. It's immoral.
Sometimes it's not illegal, but it can be immoral.
In the United States, for the most part, it is illegal, for the most part. There are some that, in some countries, where it's part and parcel to every day of business. So, bribery and anti-corruption is a big part of business, no matter what part of the world you live in, even back to Moses on the mountain. So God tells Moses here in verse 8, "Thou shalt take no gift For the gift blindeth the wise and perverteth the words of the righteous. You know, Terry, I know you got some influence here in the county, and I need some stuff, you know, for my driveway and the house and stuff. So since you got this influence, I'm going to give you this basket of $100 bills. And see if you can get some pulled.
Well, it's always, a lot of times it's more innocent than that.
Oh, yeah.
Terry, I've got 40 extra bushels of corn, and I know you like to keep it, you know, would you, I just give that to you.
You know, I've got these tickets to the ball game.
There you go.
All you have to do is think about the systems of basketball and football done. We don't have to talk any further.
That's it.
And we don't care as long as we get that player.
It is a
You
bit.
know, don't hide that either. We're going, yeah, baby. All it was a pair of shoes.
I saw him driving that dude. When Jessica and I were at Derby, all the basketball players had trucks from Parker Ford.
Yeah.
They had brand new Explorers from Parker Ford. Still had the sticker, and they got to drive them. I remember it. I saw them driving. They get out and try the tags on the back. So, why is...
Patino had them in Lexington. He had the Broncos that were painted in everything that the players got.
So
But they weren't there.
They're not there. No.
But we didn't care.
Why is that gift wrong?
For just that, we got the players that the other person couldn't get
It took advantage
of a system.
of the system, and it was not fair. Who establishes what's fair or not? No, it's not the way it's supposed to be, but that's the way it is. It's God. God says what's fair.
I can tell you how it works right now. I can tell you a company that doled out Cardinal tickets behind home plate. Tim wrote, and the minute that they, the RFP, we call it, kind of the bid, called and said, I've got my tickets, you guys there, but it got,
Yeah.
did you put in good work on it?
Can't. It takes advantage and makes an unfair situation. What does it say here in verse 8? That it blinds the wise. What happens is with that person, those tickets look awful good, regardless of how well they can service your account. Regardless of how well they can provide whatever service or product that you need, it blinds you to them being a lousy partner. It blinds you to the fact that they can't pay their bills or can't do this other stuff. It blinds you to all that because you've got something good out of it. God said that happened all the way back. It blinds you to the fact that you lose wisdom. You can't make good decisions based on truth. You make them based on whatever advantage you can get out of it. Don't do that. Don't do it. It perverts the words of the righteous. That's our testimony. If our testimony, our words are out there, but people, and our testimony may be good. It says the righteous right there. But if people know that we're taking bribes or we're behaving in ways that are unjust and unfair, it makes our testimony fake. Read that. Read that again. It perverts the words of who? The evil. No. It perverts the words of the righteous. We're not talking about those guys out on the street who you know are not doing right and are living lives of sin. This is us. This is who we're the ones that are getting this warning. It's that we can't do this. We have to live with integrity among each other. We can't take advantage. We can't take bribes. We can't look at people and try to get something out of them, whether they're poor or rich. We can't do that. The last thing in verse 9 says, also, thou shalt not oppress a stranger. For you know the heart of a stranger, seeing you are strangers in the land of Egypt. What in the world does that have to do with anything? What's a stranger?
Foreigner?
A foreigner. It says we're not supposed to do what? Oppress them. What does the word oppress mean? It literally has that term press in it, which means to have a weight or a pressure on them. Don't over-pressure them. So how does that apply back then? What was God telling Moses as they were approaching the land of Canaan? And once they established themselves in that land, what did this term, do not oppress the stranger, mean? What was it going to mean to them?
Don't do wrong against them.
Don't do wrong by them. Don't take advantage of them. Don't try to turn them all into your slaves. Don't try to force them into things to your advantage. The stranger in the land is the one that needs the most help. They're away from home. They're foreigners.
I
Now,
found the Jewish aspect pretty interesting. It's the very reason that there are so many Arabs now that have settled in Israel.
yeah,
They have provision for
there's a provision for that. Going all the way back to this, and there's 1.6 million, I think it said there in the Jewish aspect, a bunch. I mean, it's a ton of people.
Their Jewish parliament has
Yep.
Muslims in it.
Yep. So why is God telling Israel not to do that? You got the rule, don't do it, don't oppress them. Why? When were you oppressed, Israel? In Egypt.
You know what it's like to do this.
Yeah, you were that guy. You were delivered out of that mess. Millions of people died because you were being oppressed. Don't turn it. Isn't this true, though? When you see people who have gotten out of a really bad situation, Jesus has a whole parable about this, where you're in trouble, God relieves you of that trouble, and then the first thing you want to do is go be that trouble to somebody who's messed with you. The unrighteous servants. Jesus, the master forgave him so much, and he went out and tried to take advantage of everybody that worked for him, and he put him in prison until he paid the last penny. We're supposed to remember, in Romans it says that we were sinners too. We were just as lost as everybody else out there. So why would we want to take advantage or oppress those who are going through that same?
We're still sinners.
Absolutely. Yes, Terry, we are. We have to remember that just like them, we're in need of grace. We're in need of forgiveness. We're in need of not oppression, but deliverance from oppression. Deliver us from evil. So, tonight we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I want to challenge everybody. For those that are going to come tonight, if they're going to be here, go towards the end of chapter 23. We're going to talk about a very specific person that's going to lead Israel through the desert into the Holy Land. Really neat. Just read the rest of the chapter. Read chapter 23. Very cool. We're going to talk about that person tonight, as well as this. Any other things before we close in prayer?
In the beginning of the verse 1, about spreading false rumors, the point I tried to make Nick this morning, I always decided about telling lies or false rumors, is if you start doing that, it gets the word, it will catch up with you someday, and people will start not believing anything that's done.
Absolutely. It's a slippery slope when you go down that. And it doesn't take long, back to what we said, to lose your witness. To have the witness of a righteous man be worthless. Thank you, Benny. That's dead on.
Yeah, it is.
Adam, you close us?
Lord, we thank you for this lesson. Thank you for helping to teach us on how to deal with other people. And, help us to remember that folks we run across, Lord, are our neighbor, and that we need to help them. God, we just thank you for our strength, all you do for us. Please be with us as we start our worship service. In Jesus' name.
Miss Sandra has passed on some snacks. She brought them from Glenn. They're in the back. So if anybody needs a snack, please go get it.
Oh,
Well, need is a strong word.